Tasya
श्रीमच्चरणार विंदार विरत स्मरणा विगलित परम भक्ति योगानु
Srimacharana Rana Vigalita Parama Bhakti Yoganu
भावेन परिभावितांतर हृदयाधिगते भगवती सर्वेषां भूतानां
भावेन परिभावितांतर
Hridayantar
सर्वेषां भूतानां
आत्मभूते प्रत्यग आत्मन्य एवात्मनस्तादात्म्यम् अविशेषेण संयुः
आत्मभूते प्रत्यगात्मनि एवात्मनस्तदा तादात्म्यम् अविशेषेण संयुः.
Yes.
We can reach.
Narine Prabhu.
Okay. Yes,
Hare
please.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace by Prabhupada. Translation. Thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, all three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities, and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these three sons of Maharaj Priyavat became advanced in pure devotional service. By the prowess of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as a super soul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and him. Purport. The Paramahamsa stage is the topmost position in renounced order of life. In Sannyasa, the renounced order, there are four stages: Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parivraja, Acharya, and Paramahamsa. According to the Vedic system, when one accepts the renounced order, he stays outside his village in a cottage, and his necessities, especially his food, are supplied from home. This is called the Kutichaka stage. When a sannyasi advances further, he no longer accepts anything from home. Instead, he collects his necessities, especially his food, from many places. This system is called Madhukari system, which literally means the profession of bumblebees. As bumblebees collect honey from many flowers, a little from each. So a sannyasi should beg from door to door, but not accept very much food from any particular house. He should collect a little bit from every house. This is called Bahudaka stage. When a sannyasi is still more experienced, he travels all over the world to preach the glories of Lord Vasudeva. He is then known as Parivrajaka Acharya. The sannyasi reaches the Paramahamsa stage when he finishes his preaching work and sits down in one place, strictly for the sake of advancing in spiritual life. An actual Paramahamsa is one who completely controls his senses and engages in the unalloyed service of the Lord. Therefore, all three sons of Priyavat, namely Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, were situated in the Paramahamsa stage from the very beginning. Their senses could not disturb them. All their senses were completely engaged in serving the Lord. Therefore, the three brothers are described in this verse as Upasama Silaha. Upasama means completely subdued, because they completely subdue their senses. They are understood to have been great sages and saints. After subduing their senses, the three brothers concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.9, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Lotus feet of Vasudeva are everything. Lord Vasudeva is a reservoir of all living entities. When this cosmic manifestation is dissolved, all living entities enter the supreme body of the Lord, Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu, who merges within the body of Mahavishnu. Both of these Vishnu Tattvas are Vasudeva Tattvas. Therefore, the great sages, Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, concentrated always upon the lotus feet of the Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. In this way, they could understand that the super soul within the heart is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they could recognize their identity within. The complete description of this realization is that simply by discharging the unalloyed form of devotional service, one can realize the self completely. The Parama Bhakti Yoga mentioned in this verse means that a living entity, by dint of unalloyed devotion service, has no other interest than the service of the Lord. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. By Parama Bhakti Yoga, by elevating oneself to the highest platform of loving service, one can automatically be relieved from the bodily concept of life and see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaha Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhujami. An advanced devotee who is known as Sat or Saint can always see within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Krishna, Shama Sundara, expands himself by his plenary portion, and thus a devotee can always see him in his heart. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhu. So, thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. See, the purpose of human life is to realize the Supreme Lord. Any activity.
प्रियांशी के बर्थडे के दिन तो कंप्रेसर 18 देखा.
Yeah. Any other activity that we do besides remembering the Supreme Lord is actually a distraction from the real goal of our life. Any other activity. It just creates an impression in our mind, and all these impressions bind us into material nature. Therefore, from the very beginning of life, actually, in the Vedic age, people were trained to remember the Supreme Lord. Mahaprabhu himself is saying, that there is no, I am not a sannyasi, I am not a brahmana, I am not a shudra, saying. So actually the point is, it doesn't matter what bodily designation one has. Kibe bipra kibe nyasi, shudra kene nai, jai Krishna tattva veta, sei guru hai. It doesn't matter whatever is one's bodily designation. If he knows, if he has realized Krishna, sei guru hai, then he is guru. So point is that one has to remember Krishna continuously. All these other activities, the so-called brahmachari, the so-called ashrama, so-called varnas, they are simply there because the living entity is already so badly conditioned. Therefore, to regulate that conditioning and elevate him, we have these other positions. But the real objective of varnashram is sannyas. So sannyas is also trained. The training of sannyas is given in a very scientific manner. Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajak Paramhans. So one is not ordered to leave the home suddenly. One becomes a Kutichak. One lives outside the home in a small hut. Kutichak. He lives there, the family members bring him food, he engages in bhajan all the time. Gradually, when his bhajan becomes mature, then he lives outside the village. Then that is Bahudak Sannyasi. At that stage, family stops, all the other villagers bring him some madhukari, some food. Then once his renunciation matures still further, the bhajan matures still further, then he starts traveling everywhere. Parivrajacharya. So his bhajan has matured, he can start preaching at this stage. After Parivrajacharya, when he has realized the Supreme absolutely, then he is known as Paramhans. So this is a gradual progression of sannyas also. 4 stages. So, because this is the real objective of life, becoming free from bodily conditioning. This is not a position of prestige or anything. Actually, at the very beginning of sannyas, one has even forsaken one's prestige. A sannyasi doesn't care. When a sannyasi goes to beg, someone will give him, someone will refuse him. So even when kings become sannyasis, as a king he would have ordered and taken anything he wanted. But as a sannyasi, people will refuse him. That is also a test of his humility. Because the real purpose is to become free from all these conditionings. One may think, oh, I have a great wife, great children, great family. But that is all illusion, deeper and deeper illusion. The more one indulges in it, the more one will become tied down to this material world. So, these three brothers, the three sons of Maharaj Priyavrat, they were renounced from the very beginning of life. And still they practiced sannyas and they purified themselves. All three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. So, the real objective is controlling the senses. Not that one has to take the designation of a sannyasi or anything, but one has to control the senses. If senses are not controlled, one will become more and more entangled in material nature. One will be happy. The nature of Maya is such that Maya makes one feel happy. And the more one is feeling happy in the material activities, the more one is actually living in danger. The more one will be consumed by the fires of Maya. So by practicing sannyas, by detaching one's mind from activities, one is able to focus it on the Supreme Lord, who resides within the heart. And then gradually, one is able to see the Supreme Lord outside also. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Within the heart, they can see Yamashama Sundaram Achinta Guna Sarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So, the devotee in the first stages of bhakti sees the Lord within the heart, and gradually as the bhakti matures, one is able to see the Lord face to face outside also. So this is the word, upashama, completely subdued, so subduing the senses, because senses is just like a stream of water. If it is muddy, you can't see anything. But if you allow the water to become still, the mud settles down and you can see the bottom very clearly. So likewise, in the consciousness of a human being, the senses are always agitated. So everything is muddy. Sometimes I think someone is my friend, someone is my enemy, he's my family member, she is not my family member, or this is good, this is bad. All this is a mud of Maya, floating in our water. When the mind becomes absolutely calm, when one becomes still in sannyas, then gradually this mud settles down and one realizes that in this world he is completely alone. Except for the Supreme Lord, no one else belongs to him. So in this way, when the mud settles down, when all the senses are calm, then the mud of desire settles down and one is able to see the Paramatma face to face. So this is a process. This is why sannyas is needed, to still the senses. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Prabhuji, these 4 stages of sannyas, the progression occurs under the supervision of a guru, or it is just like how
no,
a person.
Guru. At the stage of sannyas, guru is already gone. A person takes sannyas at the age of around 60 or 70. So mostly there would be no guru at that time. I mean, at least physically he would not be present.
Okay. So he only decides like these 4 stages.
He feels. He knows. Like from a Kutichak stage, when he doesn't feel any more attachment to family, he becomes Bahudrak. From that stage, when he feels that he doesn't need the shelter of the village, then he becomes Paramhans, Parivrajikacharya. There are different stages of maturity.
The Vaishnava sannyasis also follow these stages?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anyasyam api jayayam trayah putra asanna uttamastaamaso revata iti manvantaradhipatayah.
Anyasyam api jayayam trayah putra asanna uttamastaamaso revata iti manvantaradhipatayah. May I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Translation. In his other wife, Maharaj Priyavrat begot 3 sons named Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. All of them later took charge of Manvantara millenniums. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In every day of Brahma, there are 14 manvantras. Duration of one manvantara, the lifespan of one manu is 71 yugas, and each yuga is 4.32 million years. Almost all the manus selected to rule the manvantras came from the family of Maharaj Priyavrat. Three of them are particularly mentioned here in named Uttam, Tamasa, and Raivata. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Almost all the manus selected to rule the manvantaras came from the family of Maharaj Priyavrat. So you see, this is exalted. So these are souls which are selected by the Supreme Lord. These are great souls. Because as we have discussed previously also, kings are not meant to just rule and enjoy. Like today, people fight with each other. Old men are fighting with each other to become kings. But in the previous ages, it was not like that. Becoming a king was a great responsibility. So the Lord selected only very special souls for this role. And even they were quite reluctant to take that position. Because it was such a great responsibility which was so full of dangers. Today, no one knows the dangers, so they rush like fools into it. 1/6 of the karma of the praja goes to the Raja. Okay, so text 29. Evam upashamaya shama yaneshu swataneshva atha jagati patir jagatim.
Evam upashamayeneshu swatanayeshu jagati patir.
Arbudanya ekadasha parivatsaranam avyahatal khila purushakar sar.
Arbudanya ekadasha parivatsaranam avyahatal purushakar sara.
Sambrata dora dand yugala pidita morvi guna stanita viramita.
Samvrita dor danda yugala pidita maurvi gunastanita viramita.
Dharma pratipaksho barhishmatyash chanudinam edhamana pramoda.
Dharma pratipaksho barhishmatyash chanudinam edhamana pramoda.
Prasarana Yoshinya Vrida Pramushita Hasavaloka Ruchira Kshvelya Adi.
Prasarana Yaushinya Vrida Pramushita Hasavaloka Ruchira Kshvelya Divi.
Parabhuyamana Viveka Ivana Buddhyamana Iva Mahamana Bhuje.
Parabhuyamana Viveka Ivana Buddhyamana Iva Mahamana Bhuje.
Mary Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Pranam. Translation and purport by Sri Prabhupada. Sri Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. After Kavi, Mahavira, and so on were completely trained in the Paramahansa stage of life, Maharaja Parivarta ruled the universe for 11 arbatas of years. Whenever he was determined to fix his arrow upon his bowstring with his two powerful arms, all opponents of the regulatory principles of religious life would flee from his presence in fear of unparalleled powers he displayed in ruling the universe. He greatly loved his wife, Brahmasimati, and with the increase of days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. By her feminine behavior, as she dressed herself, walked, got up, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, Queen Brahmasimati increased his energy. Thus, although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife. He believed He behaved with her just like an ordinary man, but actually he was a great soul. Purport. In this verse, the word dharmaha pratipaksha, opponents of religious principles, refers not to a particular faith, but a varnashram dharma, the division of society, socially and spiritually, into four varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, and four ashrama, Brahmacharya, Drashta, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. To maintain proper social order and help the citizens gradually progress towards the goal of life, namely spiritual understanding. The principles of Varnashram Dharma must be accepted. From this verse, Maharaj Parivrata appears to have been so strict in maintaining this institution of Varnashram Dharma that anyone neglecting it would immediately flee from his presence as soon as the king warned him by fighting or administering light punishment. Indeed, Maharaj Parivarta would not have to fight simply because of his strong determination. They dared not disobey the rules and regulations of the Varnashram Dharma. It is said that unless human society is regulated by Varnashram Dharma, it is no better than a bestial society of cats and dogs. Mahadiparivarta, therefore, strictly maintained Varnashram Dharma by the extraordinary, unparalleled powers. To maintain such a life of strict vigilance, one needs encouragement from his wife. In this Varnashram Dharma system, certain classes such as the Brahmins and Sannyasis do not need encouragement from the opposite sex. Kshatriyas and Grastas, however, actually need the encouragement of their wives in order to execute their duties. Indeed, a Grasta or Kshatriya cannot properly execute his responsibility without the association of his wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally admitted that a Grasta must live with a wife. Kshatriyas were even allowed to have many wives to encourage them in discharging the duties of governance. The association of a good wife is necessary in the life of karma and political affairs. To execute these duties properly, therefore Maharaj Parivrata took advantage of his good wife, Brahmacharya Parasamiti, who was always very expert in pleasing her great husband by properly dressing herself, smiling, and exhibiting her feminine bodily features, who in Brahmasmiti always kept Maharaj Parivrata very encouraged, and thus he executed his conventual duty very properly. In this verse, Eva has twice been used to indicate that Maharaj Parivrata acted exactly like a henpecked husband and thereby seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. Actually, however, he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, although he seemingly behaved like an acquiescent karmi husband. Maharaj Parivrata thus ruled the universe for 11 arbadhas of years. One arbadha consists of 100 millions years, and Maharaj Parivrata ruled this universe for 11 such arbadhas. Thank you, Prabhuji. Dharma Pranam.
No, thank you very much. So, institution of Varnashram is there. Like in a machine, there is always a regulator. The regulator is not there, the machine can actually destroy itself. So machines have one source of energy and one regulator. So the energy drives the machine and regulator controls it. Grihastha ashram is also like this. Unless there is the presence of a female, one will not feel the impetus to become materially active. Like in the theory of economics by Adams, also it is mentioned that by Adam Smith, the economic theory, he also mentions that unless there is impetus of family life, a man will have no incentive to advance economically. So the point is, this kind of sex life at home encourages a man more and more in material endeavors to enjoy the senses and to create facilities for sense enjoyment. However, in the absence of regulation in the form of grihastha ashram, a man will become completely uncontrolled and the society will devolve into animalistic sense gratification, like we see in the modern society. Complete obsession with sex life. This is because there is no regulation of grihastha ashram left anymore. This attraction between male and female would become so strong that a man would have no sense of who he really is. So, therefore, Maharaj Priyavrat very strictly enforced this grihastha ashram everywhere. He himself lived as a grihastha. He instituted this varnashram system all through the universe, and he strictly enforced it. Now, Maharaj Priyavrat acted like a henpecked husband and thereby seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. So he acted in this way, even though he was very fully aware of who he really is. Now, point here is one has to be very careful not to fall into this position. So Queen Barhishmati, now here is also a very important point. Queen Barhishmati always kept Maharaj Priyavrat very encouraged. So by her pleasing behavior. But today when we see wives are disobedient, quarrelsome, unchaste, then the incentive to advance spiritually is lost. Materially and spiritually is lost. That's why we see people are so disturbed nowadays. Broken relationships and this and that. This all happens because there is no encouragement in the home life. The whole point is that by receiving encouragement of one's wife, a man is supposed to advance economically and spiritually to the point till he becomes detached and then he takes sannyas. But if the home life is not following the standards of varnashram, then the home life itself will become hell. So one has to be very careful. So grihastha ashram is not to be entered lightly. It must be following proper rules and regulations. Srila Prabhupada has explained in other books as well as elsewhere in Bhagavatam also how married life is to be started and conducted. If one is not willing to do that, then one should avoid grihastha life because one will get into more trouble. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, here it's written the association of a good wife is necessary in a life of karma and political affairs. Karma
Yes.
is understood, but how political affairs the association of a good wife?
So he's a king. So political affairs means he'll be always fighting. There will be diplomacy, there will be fighting, there will be so many intrigues. So a man will feel discouraged. So he needs to hear the soft words of a wife. All the kings, like for example, like there's a war, the king has come after fighting a war, he has lost so many of his soldiers, he has killed so many men. Naturally, his mind would be disturbed. So he needs a wife who would encourage him. So now, here it doesn't mean that the wife is some kind of a romantic sex queen. No. Here what it means is that the wife is also spiritually advanced. She gives him good counsel. Like we see the example of Mandodari. That's the best example actually. Ravana was a third class degraded Rakshasa. But Mandodari always gave him good counsel. Even when the war was progressing with Lord Ram, Mandodari was always giving him advice to surrender to Lord Ram, to return Sita and end this war. So that is the kind of wife we are talking about here.
Okay, good. Thank you.
In fact, Prabhuji, we see in the right spirit.
Hmm?
The ladies had a
Hmm.
very important role in our culture.
Yes.
Now, just now mentioned Mandodari, even
Hmm.
Kekai. When Maharashtra was returning and he was attacked,
Hmm.
then it is Kekai that who advised her, even in warcraft.
Yes.
somehow we have now lost sight of it, and we have become absolutely materialistic. Otherwise, this comments of Prabhupada and what the text is very, very important for the ladies to understand that they had a very, very important role to play.
Yes.
A very, very important role. Because they say, and then how they used to keep happy the husband. You're right. Because they used to so pleasing that the man has a disturbed mind. He feels at calm. Okay, at least okay. My family is there with me to support me. And when they're supporting, they even then get the courage to tell him what you are thinking is not right. But they'll tell it in such a pleasant manner that the husband and the spouse will not mind.
Yes.
But Prabhuji,
That's
this also has a flip side, now that when you look for such consolation from the wife and all, the attachment also would increase.
Of course. See, why is one married in the first place? For this only.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
see, why it's the right of a husband to look for such consolation. As much as the wife's right is to seek protection from the husband, husband's right is also to seek this kind of protection from the wife. This is Grahastha Ashram. If one doesn't seek, the stage at which one doesn't seek this consolation is a stage when he has reached the level of Vanprastha or Sannyas. That is the objective.
Yeah, but this is very difficult. And
Now
Yes,
difficult, Mataji. Now it may be difficult because we have all become polluted. But earlier, even I would say about 40, 50 years back, when I could see my grandmother, etc., most of them were not highly literate. But the way they used to administer the whole family, and those days we used to have a joint family system also. And that was the main strength of Vedic culture, institution. So they always, and they used to get the training from the mother initially when they're living in that system. And when they used to come to in-laws, then they used to be again part of a family, joint family, and they used to be learning further. So they were trained, they used to be properly trained. They knew that how the mother was doing, behaving in a particular situation, or the mother-in-law, a great girl, she a mother-in-law, she is behaving. And that used to be the teaching part and training part of it. And they used to maintain quite a peace in the family. Not much. This disturbance has started coming now more. Earlier it was not that bad.
absolutely. See, a good family institution is where brahmacharis will take birth. Vaishnavas will take birth in a family which is very stable and pleasant. Like we see the example of Mahaprabhu's family or the family of Venkat Bhatta. So there is no record of Venkat Bhatt taking sannyas actually. It is just mentioned that Venkat Bhatt and his wife left this world.
Mm-hmm.
So because they were such a stable and pure family, a great devotee like Gopal Bhatta Goswami appeared there, who is an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord. So that's the importance of this, this family institution. Yeah.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yep. So we take text 30. Yavad avabhasayati suragirim anuparikraman bhagavan adityo
Yad Tad Abhidhasya Sati Sura Grin Anupikraman Bhagwan Adityo
vasudha talam ardhenaiva prasapatya navachchadayati tadahi
Vasudehitam Ardhis Pratyapate Aradhanete Pachyadhu Patutdehi Bhagavad
Bhagavad upasano pachitati purusha prabhavastad abhinandan
Bhagavad Upanishathi Purusha Prabhava Tad Anubhavitaram
samajavena rathena ज्योतिर्मयेन रजनीम अपि दीनम करिष्यामि इति Saptakrit.
Samajyavini Tyani Yutrimi Yeni Rajanam Api Dinam Kastam Sapskar.
Vastaranim Anuparya Krama Dvitiya Iva Patanga.
Vastinam Anupriya Akrod Dutye Ev Patanga.
Yes, Guru.
Translation of Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. While so excellently ruling the universe, the king Priyavrata once became dissatisfied with the circumambulation of the most powerful sun god, encircling Sumeru hill on his chariot. The sun god illuminates all the surrounding planetary systems. However, when the sun is on the northern side of the hill, the south receives less light, and when the sun is in the south, the north receives less. King Priyavrata dislikes this situation and therefore decided to make daylight in the part of the universe where there was night. He followed the orbit of the sun god on the brilliant chariot and thus fulfilled his desire. He could perform such wonderful activities because of the power he had achieved by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's a Bengali saying which describes that someone is so powerful that he can make the night and the day night. That saying is governed because of the prowess of the Priyavrata. These activities demonstrate how powerful he became by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna is known as Yogeswara, the master of all mystic powers. In Bhagavad Gita 18.78, it is said, wherever there is a master of all mystic powers, Yatra Yogeswara Krishna. Victory, fortune, and all other opulences are present. Devotional service is so powerful. When a devotee achieves what he wants to accomplish, it is not by his own mystic power, but by the grace of the master of the mystic power, Lord Krishna. By his grace, a devotee can accomplish wonderful things, unimaginable, even to the most powerful scientist. From the description in this verse, it appears that the sun moves. According to the modern astronomers, the sun is fixed in one place, surrounded by the solar system. But here we find that the sun is not stationary. It is rotating a prescribed orbit. This fact is corroborated by the Brahma Samhita 5.52, Yagyasya Pravati Samprita Kala Chakraha. The sun is rotating in the fixed orbit in accordance with the order of the Supreme Godhead. According to Jyotir Veda, the science of the astronomy in the Vedic literature, the sun moves for 6 months on the northern side of the Sumeru hill and for 6 months on the southern side. We have practical experience of this planet that when there is a summer in the north, there is a winter in the south, and vice versa. Modern materialistic scientists sometimes present themselves as knowing all the ingredients of the sun, yet they are unable to offer a second sun like Maharaj Priyavrata. Although Maharaj Priyavrata devised a very powerful chariot as brilliant as the sun, he had no desire to compete with the sun god. For Vaishnava never wants to supersede another Vaishnava. His purpose was to give abundant benefits in material existence. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur remarks that in the months of April and May, the rays of the Maharaj Priyavrata's brilliant sun were as pleasing as the rays of the moon, and in the October and November, both morning and evening, that sun provided more warmth than the sunshine. In short, Maharaj Priyavrata was extremely powerful and his actions extended his power in all directions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hmm. So his activities demonstrate how powerful he became by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shrir Vijayor Bhutir Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. This is what Sanjay is saying. So, if one wants victory in life, one should worship Krishna. Of course, we don't worship Krishna for victory, for material victories, but there is no harm in asking that. I mean, if one is so badly conditioned, no. Akama sarvakamava moksha kamudaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. Whatever position one is, whatever situation one is, one should worship Krishna. Yajeta purusha param. Somehow or the other, one should always worship Krishna. So whether one is full of desires or one has no desire, or whether one desires moksha, moksha kamudaradhi. So, so here we see Maharaj Priyavrata, when he realized that the universe is not being administered properly, he created an artificial situation by which the universe could receive light properly. Now, this is slightly different from the arrangements made by Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu changed the weather itself because he just so desired. But here, Maharaj Priyavrata is doing this superhuman activity not out of his false ego, but for the satisfaction of the living entities. This is the difference. He is doing it for others, whereas demons do it for themselves. So, now this is also one very interesting point. From the description in this verse, it appears that the sun moves. According to modern astronomers, the sun is fixed in one place, surrounded by solar system. No. No. So here it is mentioned that sun is actually moving. Actually, if you see, if you see the Einsteinian theory of relativity, you'll realize that frame of reference is most important. So in reality, there is nothing fixed in this universe. Everything is in motion. If not physically, then at least in the Kala Chakra, under the wheel of time, everything is moving. So even the sun is always moving. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
So is it then that Earth and Sun both are moving or?
Yes, Earth is moving relative to sun, but sun is also moving within the universe.
That's not fine.
No, sun is also moving, Earth is also moving. All the planetary bodies in this material universe are in some sort of motion around pole star. Yes, Anandam.
Hare Krishna,
That's right. Yes, Prabhu.
I was hearing that Priyavrata Maharaj is doing something very extraordinary. And as you said, his consciousness is actually for not his own self gratification, but to serve the people.
Yeah.
So then, but even that also has a lot of passion element, isn't it? Like,
absolutely. He's a
unless
grahastha.
your motto is only to serve devotees and Krishna, for all other thing, whatever service you do has a lot of passion element. So,
yes.
But when Priyavrata Maharaj was still maintaining his pure devotion by doing such activities.
Huh?
So do we understand like Priyavrata Maharaj was able to maintain his pure devotion by even doing such phenomenal activities?
Yes, because he was acting directly under the instructions of the Supreme Lord. He was a Rajarshi. Like Maharaj Amrish, like Yudhishthir Maharaj. So it was not that Yudhishthir Maharaj was sitting there with a chanting bead in his hand. No, he was doing diplomatic talks, he was fighting, he was admonishing people, he was also accepting others' respects, but within his heart, always meditating only on Krishna. So the external activity may appear to be in passion, but internal consciousness is always pure devotion.
That is what we need to learn a lot and train ourselves.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hari Hari. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you. So we stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Uh,
Jay, thank you.
Dandavat